Hey, and welcome back to the number one podcast in the world, the Cellarcast, episode 152. Is that, no, that's not 3 years. 3 years would be 52 plus, that would be like dude, I'm gonna do this on a calculator right now. 52 times 3 is 156. Okay, so we're pretty close to getting 3 years technically sort of episodes. Don't count the ones that I missed. Don't count the weeks that I missed. Okay, let me tell you about the week I've had a very calm week, you know? I've kind of been recovering, relaxing from making that System Shock video. I think I might have mentioned this before, but every single video that I make, you have to imagine whenever you see a new video of mine in your subscription box that the previous 2 or 3 days in my life have been non-stop working on it. So getting it out the door is like, it's like a moment. And I kind of get to breathe, and that's why I take a week off. So, because that's how I do it long term. Hey, how do you avoid burnout? Just like take a week break every now and again. It's awesome, actually. Why doesn't everyone just do that? Why doesn't everyone just have a job that could do that? But no, seriously, that's actually the solution. Is just like to take breaks and like readjust. Or that's a significant treatment for it. That's why people go on vacations. It's literally, that's why. It's to survive, to stay alive. Most of it has just been spent kind of just playing the games I usually play, getting back into a little bit of City Heroes, which I want to talk about in a little bit. But also, I had a moment where I said, you know what? My whole life, I've always uncomfortably flirted with the idea of video game development, and actually, oh my god, trying to make a video game of my own. And yeah, I could come up with like some ideas, like some small, very simple ideas that I think would probably be achievable by a single person. That I could probably put something together like that, right? I'm not going to be the guy who's like, I'm going to make the WoW killer MMO for my first game. I'm going to make 100% science-based dragon MMO or anything like that. I kind of understand. I don't really understand, but I kind of understand the actual scope of game development, at least just from having heard about it my whole life. So I know, like, yeah, okay, you should probably start with something extremely small and simple and set achievable goals, right? I literally saw, like, a thread the other day that was someone on Reddit who was like, I just spent 3 years making my first game, and it sold like 300 copies in 6 months. I spent so much time and money on it, and I've made, like, next to no money. Next to no money off of it. And or like a year or something like that. Like in a year, like pretty fairly low sales, right, for the time investment. And the number one piece of advice was, don't spend 3 years making your first game. Don't do that. You have to assume that the first thing you do is going to fail. Just assume it. Like, don't feel bad about it. Don't have expectations. Literally just assume that the first thing you're going to do is not going to go anywhere and it's going to suck. It took like a year of making videos straight for me to have any traction, and I'm still like a tiny little guy. You have to just assume that you will not be successful the first go around or two, right? Anyway, I was like, you know, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna actually go for a really simple. I had a little idea. I was like, let me start off with making like a simple rock paper scissors game. And I downloaded Godot, and I opened it up and looked at everything, and I was like, oh yeah, I have to actually program. And I looked up like a little guide, like a little starting tutorial for like C++. And that's when I remembered, oh, right. I fucking hate programming. I hate coding so much. It is, I cannot stand it. It is the most, I don't know, it's boring. It's unintuitive. It's not interesting to me. Which is kind of a problem because coding is a little bit important for making a video game. So I'm like, I have my initial like, and then I walk away from it, and then like the next day I was like, okay, no, let me try to come back to it. Let me try to come back and look up like, okay, let me look up a tutorial because I'm self-taught in like almost everything I do. I'm self-taught. And I look up a tutorial and I'm looking at like the example code and all that, and I'm looking at the explanation, and I'm like, nothing about this makes any sense. I don't understand what any of this, yeah, I could just copy paste it from from like the website into like whatever Visual Studio Code or whatever that I'm using. But like I don't understand anything that's going, like I need to understand the basic logic of what's going on. And why things are like, why are you making certain decisions when you write it? Why do you write it this way? It's a feeling that I have that I get with certain skills or topics where I looked at this the same way that I looked at like learning math in school. Not intentionally. Not like I'm going to think of this like they evoked the same feeling in me of like, I really don't want to learn how to do that. I really don't want to learn how to do this. Let me drag myself through it, which isn't a great place to begin with, right? It's not great. Contrast that to other hobbies or skills that I've learned, like I don't know, like miniature painting or video editing or writing or like learning Japanese or something, all of which I kind of like taught myself or you know, sought out materials on my own to go learn. And with each one of those, everything that I learned about it was like really interesting and was exciting and was cool to me. And I look at like coding tutorials and something about it just infuriates me. And it's hard to articulate why. It feels like, it's like spite, I guess. Here's something else that I realized, because I haven't... I haven't run into this. The math comparison is pretty good. It's pretty apt because I have the same problems that I have with learning coding that I do with certain people who try to teach me math. Not my math teachers themselves necessarily, but sometimes. Okay. So here's what I'm talking about. I go to look up I'm copy pasting code and I'm like, okay, let me copy paste it, and then I will look through it and I'll try to read it. And whenever I don't know something, I'm just going to look it up and I'm going to try to understand what's going on so that I can kind of start trying to teach myself what the individual parts are of would you call it a sentence? I don't know, a line of code. Like what is going on here? Because it comes with annotations, comes with comments. So I can kind of try to like puzzle piece it together as to, okay, well, why do you write this? Why do you use that? And the first, I immediately came to a roadblock in why do you use angled brackets here? Why would you use angled brackets here? Is there a reason for that? Could those be swapped out? You know, what's the significance of that? And I looked up like, an explanation of all the different brackets and how they're most commonly used in coding. And I think for most people, maybe for many people at least, like a lot of comments underneath this video were saying, oh, this is so helpful, you made it make so much sense. But the way this guy explained it is he went through all these examples of like all these different instances or all types of brackets, and he would often use metaphors to describe them. He would be like, the square brackets, or it's like a box of chocolates. It's like a box of chocolates with a bunch of different types of chocolate inside. And I'm like, dude, stop it. don't do this. For me, I have learned that metaphorical explanations, this is kind of funny because I am a very, like, I don't know, literary guy. I don't know what you would say. Like I make a lot of metaphors in my own life and stuff, and when I'm talking about things. But when I'm learning about something, I need you to. I cannot do with metaphors. It makes it more confusing. It's like throwing up an extra layer of opaqueness. Opaqueness would mean like not being see-through, right? An extra layer of obstruction between me and what we're actually talking about. I need to get closer. To it. And metaphors do not help me with that. I remember talking to like if I'm learning about something like kind of complex like this and very technical, I need specific examples and counter examples and things like that, and comparison points. Like I remember I was talking to Prox one night, and he knows all about cars, and he was telling me about the way that a car works. And I've never been particularly interested in cars, but I figured because it's his interest, I would like try to actually learn about it and ask him about this interest of his. As he taught himself, which I find very impressive, he taught himself all about cars and the way that they work and all their components just on his own. And I was asking him things, and he would try to do what, like, I think a lot works for a lot of people, which is he would say something like, well, I forget what part we were talking about, but this part of the car, it's like the control system of the car, and you can think of it as like there's like these workers, and I'm like, no. Like, tell me, like, what are the mechanisms, and how do they work together, and what do they look like, and how do they move? And like, what are the chemical reactions? What are the chemical reactions that are happening? Like, I had no idea. Like, you have to explain to me, like, okay, here's something neat. I feel like actually a lot of people don't understand this about cars. I didn't, certainly. When you push down on a gas pedal on a car, I always kind of figured that was like feeding more gas or something like that into the engine or whatever. But no, it's always the same amount, I guess technically the same amount of gas. What's changing is that you're letting more oxygen in. You're letting more oxygen come in because there's a whole like vacuum system inside of the engine or some shit like that pulls oxygen in and then uses the oxygen to create like a spark with electricity, and that ignites the fuel. Like that's what ignites the gasoline. So you're not actually, so the oxygen is like the fuel for the chemical reaction. The fuel is just, it feels so counter to like how you usually think of it. But no, like the fuel in a car is actually just an ingredient to the actual reaction, to the actual thing that's going on to make the car go, to create the energy. The other half of that is like the electricity and the oxygen needed for it. And that's what happens when you push down on the gas pedal. Like, you've ever seen the like the pipes on a car, not like the tailpipe, but what are those front, I don't even know what they'd be called. You're seeing like those front pipes on like the hood of a car, like the top, and they've got those sort of like coin shaped things that'll like tip backwards. That's what's going on. That's letting more oxygen in. So like the harder you push down the pedal, the further those things tip, and until they're like basically perpendicular, and then to where the starting position. And then they're letting in the maximum amount of oxygen. Like, I need an explanation like that. And I find that a lot of people... Okay, if I was going to learn coding, I think I would need an actual tutor to sit down with me and explain things and actually answer my questions. Like who's willing to sit down and be very patient for like 2 hours at a time and answer my really specific questions. This is what I did with Japanese too when I had a tutor for Japanese. Is I would be like, okay, like we're not doing metaphors, because I find a lot of coding materials online are like, here's the raw code of something with some annotations to tell you what the functions of the things are and like what they're doing, not the why, just the what. Or it's like people, they're giving these like metaphorical examples to try to describe it to people. And neither of those really work for me to help me understand what I'm doing. I remember when I was learning Japanese, I would ask my tutor, like, why is this word being used? Is it kind of like this thing in English, or is it completely different? I would need to do stuff like that with C++. Okay, why are we using this kind of bracket here? Could we use a different type? No, okay. So that means that it's this kind of thing, and you use that here. Why are we using this kind of whatever? I don't know what the fucking thing you write at the start of a coding phrase. I understand the function thing because I remember that from math. Why do we use why do we have a line break here? Why do we have an indent here and not an indentation, not an indent here? Why do we use a square or like a curly bracket in the middle of this thing, but then we don't have one to like close it? It looks like, or like I need to ask very granular technical questions. Like, could you replace it with something else? Could you is this the only way to do this thing? Or are there other ways to do it? What are the advantages of writing something like this? Does that make it easier or harder to do certain things? And I really need to get into the weeds with it. So it's I don't know. I'm just a very particular kind of learner when it comes to certain topics, and coding is a challenge for me. So at the moment, I have stalled on any aspirations. I've done like a modicum, like a very meager amount of sort of coding before when I was messing around with Mugen. But that's like, I don't know, that's like very, how do I call it? Like top level, surface level programming. Like you're just kind of using the inbuilt functions of Mugen and just writing around them and kind of fitting them. It's like, it's like I don't want to say it's like Scratch, the best coding language, but it's a similar kind of idea, like a lot of pre-built mechanisms, and then I kind of tapped out when it got into like, writing your own stuff to make things more complex or to do things in a more specific way. I tapped out for that, so it sucks. It's disappointing. Like, there's things, I feel like most things I can try out and be like, you know what, it's not for me, and that's fine. I'm just finding out what I like. But this is a case where it's like, I want it to be for me, though. Like, I really want, like, I would, if I had the means to, like, skill-wise and knowledge-wise, I would have already been making games. I fucking love video games. Are you kidding me? I would have already been making, like, little games as, like, hobby projects or something. I just fucking hate programming. And that's always been my wall that I haven't been able to get over. And it's like this thing that I really want to do that I love. I love the idea of, at least. I love the medium. There's like this thing in my brain, the way that my brain works, that's like keeping me from doing it or making it like really like pulling my nails out to do it. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll find a hidden way that'll make me fall in love with it, with programming. But until then, I'm going to talk about something that I didn't think I would ever be talking about, which is the Nintendo Direct that just happened. What is it, June? The June Nintendo Direct, which, honestly, that had some stuff that I liked, namely two things. The first one I'm going to talk about is probably not the one you would expect me to talk about. It is the Metroid Prime 4 trailer. I don't think I've ever really talked about this, but I love Metroid Prime. I think that game is great. I had it on... I got the Metroid Prime Trilogy Collection on Wii, which apparently is like a pretty rare game. That's a pretty rare set, like box set to get. It comes with like a steel book and shit. I have no idea where it is. It might have gotten lost in a move or donated or something like that. But that was like a miracle. That was 3 games for like $40. Somehow we got it for like fairly cheap online or something. And the first 2 games had been what would you call it? It's not really a remaster, not really made compatible with the Wii, because the first 2 games are obviously GameCube games. The third one, Metroid Prime 3. Why can't I remember the subtitle of that one? I can't remember. Metroid Prime 3. Corruption, that's what it was. The third one was a Wii exclusive, and that's when they introduced the pointer controls. The first 2 games, you could also play those with a GameCube controller, because I mean it was compatible on the Wii, but they were essentially like retrofitted with the pointer controls from the third game. And dude, I don't think this would be obvious to a lot of people, and it wasn't to me. Man, those Wii pointer controls for like a first-person shooter feel great. It feels really good. It feels like it's so smooth. Like you don't even think about it. I've seen a niche appreciation for pointer controls or gyro aiming in recent years, and I saw like some immediate pushback from people who had never tried it. And I can tell you that, like, if gyro aiming using, like, you know, a PlayStation controller or whatever is anything like those pointer controls, that shit is really good. That stuff works. Feels butter smooth. Like, it's so intuitive. You literally just point. You just point where you want to go, where you want the cursor to be. And it's tuned really nicely in those games. I'm sure if you tuned it poorly, of like too sensitive or not sensitive enough, or how far do you have to look to the side before the camera starts turning, I'm sure it would get... I'm sure it would be a lot more of a bother. But like that's all stuff that can get worked out. Right, that can all be adjusted, but like it's very well implemented in those games, and I love Metroid Prime. That game is so fun. That game is great. The exploring, scanning shit, reading about the world, the puzzles, finding all the secrets. Just such like an exciting, adventurous game. Great. Like there's a reason that those games are extremely well liked by the people who have played them. I wouldn't even say that they're overrated. I think they are appropriately rated, of like, these are some good ass games. So the idea, I mean, Metroid Prime 3 is kind of like, you know, I mean, it's a trilogy. It wraps up. So the idea that there would be a Prime 4 was kind of crazy. And for the longest time, there was just no news on this thing. That there was literally, it was a joke. It was like, there's a title card, and that's it. There's a logo. And now finally we have an updated logo. We have an actual trailer, and I was not expecting that. And the other thing I wasn't expecting was to get so giddy, to be so giddy at this trailer. Man, this game looks really, really nice. First thing I have to say, I have to wonder. So first of all, I think an advantage to it, a benefit to it, is that this is the latter half of the Switch's life cycle, which is when you tend to see much better looking at like this. If you watch the trailer, there's a scene at the start, I'm just reviewing it right now, where you're on like a battlefield and there's a bunch of space pirates just fucking blasting away. And man, this is a chaotic scene. Like there's laser shots going everywhere. There's like ships flying through the sky and explosions. Like it looks cool as hell. Really dynamic, like great scripting work going on. It feels like a game where we're in the back half of the console's life cycle, well into it, and the developers have been able to, they're able to like kind of squeeze the most out of the hardware. That's why I think the back half of a console's like library tends to be a lot more interesting, in my opinion. You tend to get a lot more interesting stuff out of the last couple years of its support. The other thing is that everybody kind of knows that Nintendo is going to be announcing the Switch 2 or the Switch HD. It wouldn't be HD. It would be, I don't know what they're going to call it. The Switch Up. Yeah, the Switch Up. Whatever they call it, everyone's just saying the Switch 2. Everyone's expecting that to come out or at least be revealed next year. I'm assuming holiday next year, like holiday 2025. And then sometimes that's usually when they launch stuff. You know, Nintendo also has a big. When did the PS5 launch? PS5 launch. November, yeah, like November something, and especially for Nintendo, they have a big, child, like younger audience. So marketing something as like a holiday, Christmas / Hanukkah gift is probably like a good idea. I feel like they tend to do stuff like that. This game will, I have to imagine it'll be cross-gen. Because it's going to release, it releases 2025. Yeah, Nintendo Switch in 2025. And they say they say Switch. So it'll definitely be on this console. I don't know why why am I talking like they would announce a game for the, imagine Sony comes out on the all new PlayStation 6 only. Everyone would be like, what? I imagine it'll be cross-gen, and so, I wonder what's going to look like on that one, because this looks good. This looks pretty solid, and this is definitely real gameplay. This looks like real gameplay, pretty clearly. I'm curious if there's going to be any kind of like pointer controls, similar to, I mean, the Joy-Cons. No, they don't have they wouldn't have the same thing, because the movement, all the camera movement looks pretty stiff. Or stiff in that way of like, this is being controlled with analog sticks, as opposed to the previous games. One funny thing about this trailer that I saw someone note is, this is pretty clearly a trailer that is meant for Metroid Prime fans, because 50 seconds in, Samus stops and is like, let me scan this space pirate. And that's meant to make you go, oh boy, scanning! Yeah, scanning's back! And you get like little they give you like a whole, they give you the whole breakdown. They give you custom, like unique graphics of like, oh, she scans a dead space pirate. And then it tells you all about this specific space pirate who's like, oh, with all the injuries they have. And then like 3D like scientific models on the sides of the injuries and things like that. And it lingers on it to go like, hey, look at that. And then she shoots a grate and goes into a morph ball and is riding through a vent and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. Just looking from the HUD, I'm a little curious, because there's very clearly like at least 4 different weapon slots. There's like the regular Samus gun, and then the missiles. I don't see anything for visors. That's all. That was a big part of the previous games, is equipping different kinds of visors that would give you different ways to look at the world. Let me actually double check back at when she goes to scan. It just kind of like transitions. Yeah. Huh. Okay. I wonder if it's just like hotkeyed in, or if it's just like you hold down the button Oh, hold down the trigger button and go into scan mode or something. But yeah, I am very excited. I'm very excited for this game. I'm not a Switch owner. Kat said this would be the first game. She was probably joking. This is the first game that she's gonna buy for me for her Switch. I'd love her. I'd love her forever for that. I do love Metroid Prime so much. And then Silex. He's at the end. Silex with 2 Metroids. Silex is like a freaking character from the DS spin-off Metroid Prime Hunters. That's how you know they were like, yeah, we're gonna this is for Metroid Prime fans, the new title, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. So I thought that was awesome. That's a very personal thing. Else is like a personal thing for a lot of people. The Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. Wow, this was like the talk of the town. This has been the talk of the town for even non-fighting game people. For the week, in the whole week since it's come out, people have really been going back and talking about Marvel vs. Capcom. So, what was it, a year or two ago? They did the Capcom Fighting Collection, the arcade fighting collection, which was great. It was a really cool package. It was all the Darkstalkers games that never got localized, including like the weird the bad Darkstalkers versions. It had stuff like not Robotech. Why can't I think of, oh my god. I feel so lame now. Cyberbots. They had Red Earth. They had Puzzle Fighter. They had like the Pocket Fighters, Super Puzzle Fighter, and Super Gem Fighter, and then Hyper Street Fighter 2, the Anniversary Edition, just for good measure, just to throw in a Street Fighter 2, just to make it really complete. Which that version is kind of also like you can essentially play every single Street Fighter game inside of that version itself. So it's like a little collection in itself. And that was nice. That was a cool package. This collection, the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, they're using the same branding, the same like basic logo. They've just tagged and the MvC thing at the top. And they're calling it a new series. They're referring to this as a series. Which means that they have a vested interest in, I guess, focusing on or preserving specifically their fighting game history, which is really nice. Capcom is like the legendary fighting game developer. It's nice to see them create a brand specifically to celebrate that. And specifically, okay, so if you don't know, the reason that this collection is a big deal, it isn't just because, these games have not been playable in an officially endorsed way in years. I believe the last time these games were being sold was that one like Marvel Origins collection, I think, from like 2008 or something. So something like that. There was some collection, and it was only Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2. It was only those 2 games. And that thing got delisted in like 2013 or something. And it was digital only. Like you could not play it. Like the only way that we've had to play a lot of these classic games is through emulation. It's through like Fightcade. And for the longest time, Fightcade didn't actually have support for Naomi board games, which that was like the specific hardware that those games were on. They didn't even have support for that. So you had to do like weird ass Knoll DC Bear to get it to play Marvel 2 online, which like that's the big one. Of course, everybody wants to play online. So these games haven't been officially playable, like purchasable in years, in a really, like, over 10 years, basically. So to get acknowledgement for them is nice. And it has a confirmed physical release, which means that it's not just going to get delisted and be unplayable forever. And when they said physical release, they don't mean, yeah, it comes with like a code in it. No, it's like an actual disc, as far as I can tell. Disc / those little switch chips. Num 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 num. The cards, the cartridges. So for the preservation angle, it's great. The other reason is like, okay, there was some, I don't know, there's always some miserable Twitter guys going like, well, why would I play it on, why would I want this when I can just play it on Fightcade for free? Because it's nice. Because it's nice. It's a nice thing to have. Have some sunshine in your life. Jesus Christ. It's nice to have Capcom. Let's forget could there be another game in the series? Could there be like Marvel vs. Capcom 4 or something? We forget about all that. Just like for this one vacuum instance, it's nice to have Capcom acknowledge the series and put so much effort into a collection like this, because it's not just the Marvel vs. Capcom, not just that game. No, it's Children of the Atom, X-Men Children of the Atom, the first fighting game, Marvel fighting game they did. Then Marvel Superheroes, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and 2, and the Punisher beat 'em up game. Like, they didn't have to do that. They didn't have to they could have literally just released Marvel 2 and maybe Marvel 1, you know, if they're getting the rights back anyway, or they're working that out. That's all they had to do. It could have been a bare minimum just port job with just like 1 or 2 games, and we'll sell it to you for like $30-$40. Eat it up. But no, it's actually the whole history of the Marvel Capcom crossover, all the way back with the very first one they did, which was the Punisher beat 'em up game. Like, that game is there. Like, no one cares about the fucking Punisher beat 'em up. Outside of there are people who care, but like, you know what I mean, right? Like, that's not, no one's, oh my god, like, no one talks about that game. It's there for historical purposes. Apparently, really good game. I don't know. Apparently, it's a really good beat 'em up. It probably is. I don't know. It's a 90s Capcom beat 'em up. It's probably really fun. But yeah, like, those things are nowhere near the same level of notoriety. It's there for historical appreciation. It appears that it's using the same shell as the fighting collection, the arcade fighting collection, the first one that they did. Just from like the interface, I mean, the branding makes it pretty clear. And also the fact that, you know how I can tell? It's running on MT Framework. And I know that because they have screenshots of the interface on PC using a keyboard. And it's the exact same key symbols that they use for the PC ports, the janky-ass PC ports of Street Fighter 4 and Marvel vs. Capcom 3. It's the same ones. And I know it. I immediately recognized it, and a fucking pit dropped in my stomach because from seeing those icons. I don't have the first arcade collection, so I'm not sure if it's like the exact same, but like, oh god, dude. I just like to quickly rant about those ports. Like, Jesus Christ. The like menu controls are hard coded to always be like arrow keys plus enter. And that's different from like the actual in-game like fighting game controls. And like when you fucking hit start to like look at the move list, you have to switch back to using it's so dumb if you're doing it on a keyboard. If you're using any kind of like external controller, it's not a problem because that's what it was made for, because it's like a 2011-12 PC port from a Japanese studio, and they don't give a fuck. They didn't care about making it. They didn't care about any quality of life. Are you kidding me? Anyway, it's like the same thing. And that actually ties into another little into another little wrinkle of the story, which is a lot of people noted, hey, this game's not on Xbox. This game is not on Xbox Series X or S. What's the deal with that? And there is a theory which has been, it's a rumor. I think that it's been, it's been like mildly confirmed, but I kind of believe it that so when I say it uses MT Framework, that was Capcom's old in-house engine that they used for a ton of stuff throughout the 7th and 8th generations. The first game that had it was Dead Rising. Devil May Cry 4 on it. Resident Evil 5 was on it. Dragon's Dogma was on it. All those Resident Evils from that era, like every game from there, Street Fighter 4, they all used MT Framework, and it has this kind of particular look to it. And they have mostly phased it out in preference in favor of the new engine, the RE engine, which they used for Resident Evil and Street Fighter 6 and the new Monster Hunters and all that stuff. The new mainline Monster Hunters. But there are a couple of games that actually still use MT Framework, and I'm not entirely sure why, but that is a thing. So, for instance, Mega Man 11 used it. Curiously, the last game to use MT Framework, according to the Wikipedia page, which is at least, cited and all that. They have a list of everything, of every game that's used it. The last game to actually use it and be on Xbox was the previous Capcom Fighting Collection from 2022. Now that wasn't, when I say Xbox, I mean Xbox One. Because the running theory is that MT Framework is not really compatible, or it would take extra work to create like a pipeline process for making MT Framework function on the series, on the Xbox Series systems. They have it on the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection doesn't say PS5. Is it not actually PS5? No. What the hell? It's not PS5. I just noticed that. I thought no, it's Switch, PS4, and Steam. That is so interesting. That is so interesting to me. Huh. Okay. So I guess there might also be a problem with the PS5, like porting it to PS5, like it's just too much effort for not really enough return. I can see that on Xbox. PlayStation's curious, at least 5. I think it might just speak to the kind of relatively low install base. No, PS5 is like roughly the same amount of whatever. I won't bother speculating. But yeah, it's not it's not going to be on there. And thus more discourse around the flailing Xbox brand. Dude. Xbox really spent $70 billion, making it one of the, I think like the 4th biggest acquisition of the decade so far, to acquire Activision Blizzard, resulting in them being forced to, resulting in them closing studios that were successful to cut costs from that insane investment and tarnish tons of goodwill, especially with their hardcore fan base, all so that they could release Call of Duty on Game Pass and get no sales. Incredible. Incredible. When I say these things should be studied, I'm calling it. That thing is. I think someone said, who was it? Someone on Twitter said, like, we're gonna find out how many people there really are who just buy Call of Duty to play the 4-hour campaign and nothing else. We're gonna find out how many of those people exist, because they're on Game Pass. they're buying it on Game. They are not making sales. Anyway, why is Marvel vs. Capcom 2 important? Besides the fact that it hasn't been playable in forever. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is the real big star of this show. This game, the best way that I can sum it up is that MvC 2 is a symbol of love for like a lot of people. There is this wonderful, warm energy when looking at that game that just kind of feels, it just feels good. It feels like I don't know. It's really difficult to put into words. I think it's some combination of the absolute size and scope. It probably had the biggest roster of any fighting game when it came out. Like 56 characters or something like that. There's the massive size. The fact that it's just like a huge sprite dump. There's something, it's so funny because I feel like nowadays something like that would be called like lazy, because it's mostly just sprite reuse. Very few characters in the game are actually original. They're just like brought back from the existing Capcom fighting games. Like it's just a bunch of sprites from Street Fighter Alpha and Children of the Atom and Marvel Superheroes and stuff, with like a small handful of original characters and like a couple Darkstalkers. A couple new. I forgot. Yeah, Tronbon. Is she new in that? Is Tronbon in MvC 1? Yeah, she is, isn't she? As like an assist, I think. Anyway, there's all these characters. The music is like this fucking weird, completely unrelated to any other soundtrack. It's like all jazz. It's all jazz music that everyone fucking hated when it came out. And it's like, it's so weird, right? It's so strange. Such a weird decision. The stages are these kind of just like non sequitur, unthemed, just like locations. There's that fucking clown from the amusement park stage. It's like all this shit that just gets thrown together. Like, it is not balanced at all. Like, they did not have time to balance this shit. It's like this smorgasbord that somehow it never comes off as feeling cynical or lazy. It just feels like a celebration. It feels like we've put in all this work. Here's like 1 billion characters. I love looking. If you go to the website, we finally have. I think these might be, unless there's an art book. Unless there's an art book of this stuff, we finally have like maybe the highest resolution images of all of this character art. I think this is like literally my favorite drawing of Roll from Mega Man. I absolutely adore the way that she looks in Bengus's art style in this game. I love how like everyone has like this is literally like the classic Roll that I think of when I think of the character. I love that just the look of like every single one of them has these warm tones on them. Like everybody's standing in a sunset. There's something so great and nostalgic feeling about it. Like all these characters, it's got that classic feeling to it. Turn of the Millennia Capcom had this unreal type of energy to it that I really get when I look at games like this, and I look at games like, I think like Capcom vs. SNK 2 might have my favorite presentation of any fighting game. Like I say presentation specifically because that game is like you look at the menus and the announcer and the animations and the intro movie, and it feels like an event. It feels like it's really important and crazy that this game is happening. Marvel and SNK, sorry, Capcom and SNK collide, you know? It feels momentous. And you look at, like, I don't know, the music, like fucking, the intro for Third Strike, the fight for the future is like, it's so, I sound like a stuttering idiot right now, but like I listen to it and I watch it, and sometimes I'll just watch it like 5 times in a row. Like it's just this energy that's so hard to describe. There's this like total electricity to just the mood. Like it feels like, I don't know, really, really artist first. Like this is a bunch of crazy artists who have a fuck ton of money for making Street Fighter, and they're gonna throw everything into a game. They're gonna throw everything into a game, and the music's gonna be crazy and weird, and it's just gonna be like fucking like, why is it jazz music? Probably because the guy just liked jazz. Probably because the composer just liked jazz and wanted to write some jazz music. And that's what goes in the game. It's like they didn't care. They were just doing what they wanted. I saw a nice thread about someone who is like an artist on Twitter. And they were saying that they were talking about how even for people who didn't really play it that much or might have never even played it once, it was a huge inspiration for so many artists. So many artists were just completely captivated by this game's look. Marvel 2 specifically. I mean, this game's look, like from the character art to the sprite animations and just the whole visual styling of everything. And that there's so many artists who will cite Marvel 2 specifically as an inspiration, despite never like really having played the game. Just looking at it, they're like, "Holy shit!" That's what I mean when I say that this game is like a symbol of love, because it's also something that has been kept alive, pretty much entirely by its community, entirely by people who love the game and don't want it to die and keep playing it, and they keep running tournaments for it, and they keep talking about it, and they keep making videos about it because they just goddamn love it. And it has survived decades at this point. Just being itself. So seeing it officially recognized, yeah, okay, you can go play it for free on Fightcade, yada yada. But like having that love and that passion, what's the word? Returned, or it's like one would usually say like unrequited love. You say it was requited, requited, resuscitate? No, not resuscitated. Repercussed? No, fuck. What the hell? Returning love. Synonym. Equaling, matching, reciprocating. There we go. Reciprocating. Feeling that appreciation reciprocated by the publisher, by the creator, is like it feels good. It just kind of feels good. You know? Like, again, like they didn't have to go through and make like these changes and stuff. They didn't have to make playable, like functional, good training modes with like, there's like hitbox data. Someone's going to say like, oh, but they don't have frame data. You don't need frame data in these games. You don't need frame data you can eyeball all this shit. But even like little things, like they reduced the screen flashing. They use the screen flashing in a lot of these games. So developers in like the 80s and 90s had this obsession with making the screen flash, and I hate it. It's like one of my least favorite things about a lot of old games. I remember trying to play Phantasy Star 2 on the Genesis, and every time you get hit in that game, the screen flashes red. I couldn't play it for more than like 2 hours. I had to put it down. I'm not like epileptic or anything. It's just annoying. It's just annoying as hell. It's aggravating to my eyes. Like I think a lot of people would say that they're probably sensitive to it. Yeah. So for like all these games that had flashing, there's now options to turn it down. Like Children of the Atom's really bad about it. Like every time you do a super, it's like it's like a fucking, it's like a house show or something. And there's just exploding lights in your face. So being able to reduce that is nice. I'm sure it'll create a little bit of visual weirdness because the animations were kind of designed around it. But I don't care. It's better for my eyes. Like the training modes are nice. Hidden characters. The hidden characters are now like playable by default. You go to Children of the Atom. Juggernaut and Magneto, now playable. Who was the other? Was it X-Men vs. Street Fighter? Which one? Was it Marvel Superheroes? I get so confused over which characters were in which game. Anita in Marvel Superheroes, I think, is now playable by default, which she wasn't. Doctor Doom, Thanos, and Anita are now playable. So most of these characters a lot of them were like boss characters or console exclusive unlocks. And now they're just playable by default. Where is he? Where is that guy? I'm looking for him. Yeah, they're Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, specifically that one. Akuma. So Akuma was in the game, but now Cyber Akuma is also playable. That's awesome. That's so cool. Like the weird a character who was previously only playable via like ROM hacks, right? Like literally playing on a modded version of the game is now just playable out the bat. That's so awesome. Like they didn't have to do stuff like that, but they did because it's nice. It's like what you would want. What you would want out of a release like this. All these little touches. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I have it wish listed. I would tell you to go out and wish list it. We don't know a release date. We have no release date, which I think is odd. It's coming this year. I mean, I figured. I can't imagine. It's just a collection. I can't imagine that it's like needs a ton of dev time. Like a solo standalone game. This also invites, this art is so beautiful. I've just been like looking at all the character art across a bunch of these games this whole time I've been talking. It invites a question about future games in this series or in this kind of collaboration. And I don't know, there's a lot of ways that Capcom could go. I think, so number one, if you're going to do another fighting collection, I think the obvious one at this point is a 3D fighting collection. Collect the rival schools, collect Power Stone, get all those games together into a cool collection, and I don't know, fuck it, include a build of that Capcom versus Capcom All-Stars, Capcom Fighting All-Stars. That unreleased Capcom fighter that became Fighting Jam, maybe one of the worst games they've ever put out. I don't know, do that. That's where I think that's where I would go. That's where I would go with it. Because people love Rival Schools. I'd love to play Rival Schools on like a nice collection. Add in a bunch of concepts. Just give it, to give it the treatment. I think that's like the natural follow-up to this if they're going to do that in like a year or two. Is there chances of another Marvel versus Capcom happening? Maybe. I don't know. Marvel's in a very different position now in the way that they kind of look at their license, as opposed to back when Marvel Infinite came out, where it was very MCU heavy, very we have to promote the films. And that was a serious weight around that game's neck, was having to capitulate to just this need. How Marvel looked at it, Disney Marvel looked at that game as like a marketing thing, when you want to look at it as make a good game and it will market itself on its own. Like it'll market the characters on its own. Just make a good ass game and market it properly. You wouldn't have to. You wouldn't have to market it. You would have to. What am I talking about? When I say you wouldn't have to market it, I mean like you wouldn't have to market it in the same way that you'd have to. Like people are gonna buy it because it's got Marvel characters on it. They could. I think there's certainly a possibility. I mean, a lot of discussions had to have happened to repair this relationship and to restore the faith in the company. And there also have to be people who are willing to like head up this stuff. Like when stuff like this happens, this isn't just like they send the robots to go make the game. It's like, no, someone has to go to Capcom, like higher ups, and they have to say, like, okay, there's things in a company that are just sort of a done deal. Like Marvel, for instance, they don't have to be like, hey, come to us with your pitches. They know what the fuck they want. They know what they want. They make these giant 10-year plans, like the communists, the Soviet Party. And they don't need writers to come be like, I think we should make another thing with the characters that are already super successful. So there's things that are like done deals. Other sorts of projects it requires, let's say a little more legwork. Someone has to go to the company. Someone has to go like within the company probably and be like, hey, and they have to have enough clout to be able to like make suggestions and pitch things that could require like a certain level of investment, right? Like if you were going to make like a new Marvel vs. Capcom, you would have to go to someone higher up and you would need to be like, this thing is going to cost a decent amount of money from licensing and just general development stuff and actually, everything you need to make a quality game. I have to be trustworthy enough. I need enough credibility that they're going to trust me with this. And then I have to be willing to not just pitch it. I have to be like, yeah, and I will. You have to take responsibility for it. You have to say like, I want to help produce a new MvC game or anything like that. Like if there was a new Mega Man game, they'd have to do something like that. I want to help produce it, or I need this much money. And you need like a convincing pitch. And especially if it requires licensing like this, I'd imagine you'd probably have to come with like, hey, I think it's possible I have like a contact at the company. Harada was talking about, because everyone's like, put this guest character in Tekken, put this character in Tekken. And he outlined like what it actually takes to do it, to put a guest character in a game like that. And one of the biggest hurdles is just like, do you know someone high up at that company? Because most people are not going to be that chill about it, especially if it's from like a big owner. Like it's Square. How loosey goosey is Square going to be with Tifa, putting Tifa in Tekken? They're probably going to be very protective of that character. You have to like know someone there and have a good relationship. Like if he was buds with Tetsuya Nomura, it would probably be a lot easier than starting from scratch. And I imagine when you make your pitch, you have to say, yeah, I'm friends with Tetsuya Nomura. He's my guy. I think we have a good chance of working out a deal with them because they'll trust us to like use their property responsibly. If a new Mega Man game was going to happen, someone would have to be like, I want to produce a new Mega Man game. They do have a series producer. Or no, wait, he left. I'm not sure. There's been so little Mega Man news. I'm not sure like who is even like in charge of that brand anymore. But like someone there would have to make that pitch. So like, yeah, it is a lot of effort. I don't think there was really a question. I think by the end of Street Fighter V, there wasn't really a question if there was going to be a Street Fighter 6. But there is a big question of like, not even a question. It's just like, we don't plan on making another Darkstalkers or something. That's the one everybody would want to come back. Actually, do they? I wonder if Darkstalkers is one of those games that the internet kind of tricks people into thinking is more popular than it actually is. You know, that's not to say one would fail. I just think it kind of, if you just pay attention to like Reddit or Twitter or something, I think the average person's knowledge of Darkstalkers or their familiarity with it is going to be pretty limited. Morrigan might be the best thing to ever happen to that series for that reason. I'm not saying it would fail. I think you could, I think you can take even like an obscure concept like that and market it well. And if it's a good game and the marketing is solid, you can actually gain a following. I mean, how many years had it been since there was a new Doom game? Like, Doom had completely dropped off the face of cultural relevance, unless you were like into old games, pre-2016. And then the game came out, and it had pretty decent marketing, and people were like, holy shit, this game is really cool. I like this a lot, actually. And bam, it like revives the entire... Right? Not only revives the brand... it like reinvigorates an entire subgenre of shooters, right? You could easily make another Darkstalkers. I think. Well, I say easily. I think you could absolutely make something like new Darkstalkers, and make and have it be successful if you just had a good vision for it. That's a very cop-out thing to say. Like, that sounds like a fucking Captain Obvious thing to say. But I don't know. That's like how it works. There could be another Marvel vs. Capcom. There could be another... who knows? There could be another Capcom vs. SNK, for all anyone knows. One thing that Capcom's been missing for years, ever since Marvel Infinite failed so hard it got memory hold, is that they've only got one like fighting game. They've only got Street Fighter, which is a little bit sad. It's a little bit of a disappointment. Because again, they were like the kings of the genre. Even SNK has like one or two fighting games going for a little bit. They've been focusing on 15. But I mean, they also had Sam Show. They have Garo. And they're kind of like baton passing between them. But it feels like SNK at least has like a stable of properties that they want to focus on. They've been jumping around their IP. Capcom's been very scared and very, very conservative in just sticking to Street Fighter, and not delving into their other properties that I think probably have a lot of appeal. It would be nice, like, fucking, ArcSys. ArcSys has like... when they do their world tour, they at least have 2 games. It isn't just Guilty Gear. It's like we have Guilty Gear and DNF Duel, which we helped publish and stuff like that. And they've got stuff going on. I don't know. It makes it feel like a more diverse part of the company. It would be nice to have 2 Capcom games. I think a good strategy would just be not even to like alternate them necessarily, but to, a couple years into Street Fighter being out, here's like a new Darkstalkers. And it's like kind of a slight, more of a budget game. You could do something, especially if it has like a really stylized art style. You could probably do some more budget stuff in the RE engine. And make it like a smaller scale project than like the gigantic AAA Street Fighter 6 most amazing graphics ever, muscle deformation in the character models, normal maps of like veins and shit, plus like big ass open world Yakuza World Tour mode. You don't have to do that. You could just make a straightforward kind of classic fighting game package with some fun extras and a nice art style. And just have that as like your little alternate flavor for your brand. Another Capcom versus SNK game would be cool. I would like to see the opposite. I would like to see the SNK versus Capcom. I want to see them actually, SNK actually take a crack at making a full-on crossover game again with Capcom characters that isn't SvC Chaos. When they're not in danger of going bankrupt. So, yeah, I don't know. The future's looking bright. It's looking good. Obviously, everyone would be hyped for another Marvel game. I'd be hyped as hell for it. I mean, shit. Just I don't know. Just everyone likes it. It's just like one of those series everyone kind of likes. Everyone thinks it's sick. Hey, we have more superhero stuff. Specifically, I was going to record this yesterday, and I didn't because I started Arkham City, and I downloaded the game, and I started it in the morning, and then I played it for 13 hours. Wow, that game. Wow. I'm not done with it. I think I'm a decent way through. But like, wow. That game got its hooks in me. It's got its damn hooks in me, dude. I liked, right? I really liked Arkham Asylum. I thought Arkham Asylum was great, actually, in fact. And I was worried. Okay, I was worried. I'm not done with it, but I think I'm a decent enough way through it to give some overall impressions. This isn't like thorough. I'm not going to talk about the ending of the game or anything like that. So I'll give that. I'm post Mr. Freeze boss fight, and I've done a decent amount of the side content. As in like side missions. So I was a little bit concerned, or maybe like cautious, about going into this game because, as I might have said before, I'm not a huge open world guy. Just slapping open world on something doesn't make me interested in it. I've always been a fan of more focused linear experiences or things that maybe have like they're very large maps, like large open-ended maps, but still contained. Still contained to like something like a Deus Ex map, something very complex and intertwining, with lots of different parts to it, but still like one area, one location. So I was a little concerned, like, okay, is this just going to do the thing where they take a game, they take a linear game and then chop it up and spread its pieces across an open world with a bunch of filler shit in between? And no, I can gladly say that that's not what it feels like, not to me at least. They didn't just take a game like Arkham Asylum and make it, and dilute it with a bunch of travel time and filler side quests and things like that. No, it is an actual... The world has a really nice size to it. I wasn't sure how big it would be, but the map is like it's a really nice size. It never feels too big. It feels just big enough that it's small enough that traveling from point A to point B, like across the whole map, isn't like a big pain in the ass. The movement is also really fun, which is part of it. But it's big enough. It's small and focused enough that like movement is not a big pain in the ass. Plus, there are plenty of identifiable landmarks. it's rare to go. You won't really go that far in the game without seeing something, like a building in the sky or something nearby that is recognizable that you can kind of orient yourself around. But it's also big enough that it feels like as I'm traveling around, I'm still finding new stuff. There's little nooks and crannies, little alleyways. It ironically, maybe not ironically, that's probably not the right word, but funny enough, does remind me of Lego Batman 2 and that game's open world, which I wonder if it was based on this one, because Arkham City is very, like, every rooftop has some kind of Riddler challenge or something like that, or some kind of, there's always something going on. Like, oh my god, this game is busy. There is always something happening in this game somewhere around in the world. It feels very alive. There's always like mooks hanging around, or some kind of optional challenge course you can go through, or a side quest that triggers like around the world that you can go take care of, or a location that previously didn't seem like it was a big deal, that now there's something actually there that you didn't realize there was once you investigate. And it's a fun, it makes the world fun to explore, because I feel like I'm actually finding meaningful things in it. I really appreciate the additions, or the fleshing out of the movement mechanics in this game. It's very similar to the first one. When I talk about how fun movement is in this game, man, I just really like flying, gliding around the city. They've added, I mentioned in my previous discussion about Arkham Asylum that I wish it was, I don't know, that game had points where the constrained nature of some of the maps and the more focused nature of it did make it feel like sometimes it interrupted your flow a little bit. Like you weren't really able to, you kind of had to stop, or you would grapple up to a point and then you just kind of like get up on top of it and then walk and then have to keep on running or something like that. There was a little bit of lag in the flow of that game. This one introduces maybe one of my favorite little mechanics across either of these games, which is the grapnel boost. I don't know why to say grapnel. I'll just say grapple. The grapple boost, which is you shoot your grappling hook up to some kind of ledge or surface, and as you're flying up, as you're zipping upwards, you can like double tap your movement parkour button, whatever it is. It's the all-purpose movement button they essentially have, and you'll start zooming. You'll speed up, and once you hit the ledge, you'll launch off of the ledge into a glide, and it makes traversing the environment so much fun. It makes it feel so much better because there's just no interruptions. It's just a constant series of grappling to a point, boosting off of it, gliding, finding another one, and then grappling off of that. You're always looking at the environment. The one common complaint I've heard about traveling in a lot of open world games is that the traveling isn't that interesting, and that making it part of the one solution to that is making the environment part of the traversal. And I think this game does it in a really fun way, where you are always looking, because basically everything, can serve as a movement, some kind of movement aid in some way. There's always a ledge that you can grapple off of. There's always like a rooftop that you can run across. There's always like some space that you can glide. There's a nice mechanic where you can do a dive bomb out of a glide, and then if you let go of the dive bomb, you'll actually like stop and then swoop up a little bit and like gain some height, and you accelerate a little bit. And it makes it so that even when I have to run all the way across the map because I'm trying to finish a side quest, I'm trying to find like where this character spawns or whatever, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal because outside of the tedium that kind of just comes with like having like, I gotta, fuck, do I have to check here? Outside of that like very baseline level of small tedium, the actual movement is not a bother. It's really fun. The combat is mostly the same. It's pretty much the same. One thing that I actually really appreciate is Batman has a lot of his gadgets from the previous game. And the ones that he doesn't have are either things that like wouldn't, like, it kind of makes sense for him not to ask for that initially, because he has to like request the suit and everything down to come down. Or it's stuff that is like completely, it's just not in the game. Like there's no, what is it? I know there's a couple gadgets. I don't think like the multi-batterings are in this game. It's just been replaced with like a rapid fire command for the batterings. So I like that. There's no like, we were just talking about Metroid. Every Metroid game has some kind of like, Samus doesn't have any of her things from the last game because video game. You have to find them again. This game actually keeps some continuity, which I find kind of fun. Like, no, Batman always has this stuff on him. He's always got the batarangs and the grapple hook and the like explosive gel and the code breaker and stuff like that. The combat is mostly the same. It's mostly the same with a couple little differences, like just little mechanical things, like, there's a new enemy type, or a type of, like, there's not knife wielding enemies, and you have to do this specific like rhythm. You have to like dodge them in a specific kind of rhythm that I am really bad at. It's mostly the same with a couple additions. And little tweaks here and there. There's now 2 different kinds of armor upgrades, one for melee strikes and one for like ranged attacks. Pretty expected stuff. You can slide into it very seamlessly coming from the previous game, and it inherits all of the best aspects of the free flow TM combat system from the first game. It does feel like a free flow. It feels good. It feels fun. Like all of you're always looking around for how to continue your combo. There is a lot more. One thing I do like in this game is, more compared to the previous one, is that there is a higher emphasis on using your special moves that you unlock by getting your combo counter racked up. That's a lot of fun. I really liked those moments in the original, and I think it gives a nice incentive to actually get better at the combat and to actually learn the movements and learn the patterns of enemies, or be perceptive of them, I should say. Because that's how you hitting them and countering them and then flipping over, which doesn't end your combo, and doing that it is how it feels rewarding. Like it unlocks more options for you. It's neat. Exploring the game, I think I kind of established this, but exploring is really fun. I feel like I'm constantly just finding new little challenges or things around the world. Some of them, I guess you could argue the Riddler stuff could be a little bit fluffy, but for the most part, I find them fun. I still like the riddles. What's nice about it, here's something, they solved the problem that I had with the original game, which is the visuals. In the original game, the visuals are gorgeous, really nice looking, but you spend like so much, you're incentivized to spend like the whole game in detective mode, and it just completely kills the whole art style. In this game, there is not as much reason to be in detective mode. I would say it's maybe 30 or 40% of the time you're in detective mode, or you just flash it on or off. And that's actually like a weird positive byproduct of the structure of the game. The fact that it is an open world as opposed to a smaller linear type thing. Because in Asylum, you'd walk into an area and like there could be stuff everywhere in there because it was a smaller game, and the content, it was a lot denser. That stuff was a lot denser. The Riddler secrets, all of that stuff was much more packed in. Whereas in City, everything's spread out, right? Because it's an open world thing. So environments themselves are less dense, and you could maybe make an argument for why you don't like that as much. And I think that's understandable. I haven't really had a problem with it because I still do enjoy finding that stuff and figuring out the riddles and all that. But it leads to this, it creates this nice thing that I didn't even realize, but like I did not feel the urge to be in detective mode the entire game. I would switch it on just to like look around, and then if I didn't see anything, I just turn it back off, and I'd be good, and like it was fine. Sometimes it's actually easier to be not in detective mode because detective mode can kind of screw with your depth perception a little bit. And swapping between them is actually sometimes a useful thing. Like, I'm going to check where the enemies are, and then let me switch out of it to see like where specifically. Sometimes it's just easier to see where an enemy is looking or something. Still has something about the stealth combat sections. It doesn't do the same thing that the first game did, where the first game will literally lock you in a room and say you're gonna stealth take down all of these guys. You're gonna take down all these guys, and then you'll be able to leave the room. This game doesn't quite do that. It does sort of similar. It does a couple similar things. It'll sometimes do things that are like that, but the way that the rooms are designed, I don't know. It felt a little harder. I don't know what it is. I'd have to do some kind of like deep analysis or something like that to figure out like why it feels different in this game. Because in the first one, it felt like you could really pick apart those rooms. You could really dissect those things and be a total terror. In this game, it feels a little harder. And I'm not sure if that's because the rooms themselves are designed they didn't have as much time to iterate on those rooms, and so they feel a little less like you have all these options available to you. Sometimes I kind of wish there were just more enemies in them. There aren't as many enemies in the rooms as I would like. Something about them feels, in some ways they feel harder, in some way they feel easier, and it's hard to describe. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not playing the game in a creative way. That could be it. Boss fights are an interesting topic in this game, because that was one part of the original that I kind of bemoaned. I spent a good amount of time in my previous discussion talking about how they ran into a bit of a wall. Like you can feel the developers kind of struggling in Asylum to fit the combat system into a boss battle. And in this game, they have subverted that in a couple ways. Number one, there just aren't really that many bosses at all. There just aren't that many. They just don't really bother. It's either like when you have a big encounter with a villain, it's some kind of puzzle thing. There's like two that I can think of that are notable, where it's like an actual boss with a health bar. Like there's a thing where you have to fight the penguin and you need like a specific device, and all you fucking have to do is just avoid his shots until you get to you're like going around in this room, and he's in a platform at the center that you can only get through on a certain walkway, and you're literally just walking around the outside until you get to that walkway, and then you just turn on a device that you have, and then you can just run at him and punch him, which is kind of funny. Yeah, like it's not a crazy boss fight or anything, but I don't know, that's kind of how Penguin would be. It's almost like the area leading up to him is the whole challenge. Like the whole iceberg lounge and museum section that he has. There are two boss fights that I can think of, and is this spoilers, I guess, that I've done so far. I imagine there's at least a couple more. But I like both of them. So one of them is Ra's al Ghul, or is it Rage? They say Rage in this game. Rage al Ghul. But I've always heard Raj al Gupta. Yeah, Raj al Gupta, the Indian assassin cult leader, is he's got a decent boss fight in this like weird fucking spirit realm dimension. And the way that they do it is kind of clever. Essentially, you don't really fight him one-on-one, except for like a brief moment. What they actually do is he's got this crazy form, like this crazy spirit form, and he's essentially like a whirling death machine. And you are just avoiding his attacks until you position yourself to like shoot him in his opening, like where his defenses are opened up. So it's like an endurance battle and reflexes and stuff like that. And you're dodging and paying attention to what he's doing. And then once you lower his health bar a certain amount, then it switches into a big group battle of all of these like weird sand clones that he's made. And then switching back to the big whirling death machine kind of style. And then you do that a couple times, two or three times, and then it's over. And you get like a little cinematic kind of sequence at the end that's a little more like scripted, like I would say scripted gameplay. But it's pretty solid. I didn't mind it. I thought it was pretty good. And then what might be the best, I wouldn't be surprised. I've heard people talk about this fight, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is the best fight in the series. But man, that Mr. Freeze fight kicks ass. That is a really cool fight. Essentially, you're trapped in this big room with Mr. Freeze, and he is like, it's such a cool fight, and it's such a cool position to put Batman in. Mr. Freeze is basically like a horror movie villain. He works like a stalker, like a slasher villain, like a Michael Myers from Halloween, where he walks very slowly. The whole premise of the fight, the idea of the fight, is Freeze is too strong. He is too strong to fight one-on-one. His suit is too sturdy, and his freeze gun challenges Batman so much, and it's so strong that if you just try to go up to him, he's just gonna fucking blast you, and Batman just can't win. It's an extremely difficult fight for him to win one-on-one up front. So you have to essentially outsmart him. It plays like a puzzle. It plays like a puzzle where you're using the environment to weaken him and create openings to deal damage. So he is always following your footsteps. He's like, you run away, and then he's analyzing. He's got a little scanner on the ground, following your trail. So you can kind of predict the pattern, the path he's going to go in, and then there's all these little things around the room. So like the first thing I realized was there's like this pool of water, and there's this like very shallow puddle of water where you're that's built up, and there's some electrical wires that have dropped into it, and you can lead him. I was like, I like accidentally electrocuted myself checking if you could turn it on with the button that's next to it, and I did. And you can lead him into that spot and then throw a batarang there, and it'll electrocute him, and then he'll be staggered, and then you can run up and give him like a quick beat down, and then he'll throw you off and charge up like a fucking ice shield or something, and then you got to run away again. And I was like, oh, okay. And I started looking at the environment, and there's like a generator here. I shoot the generator, and when he's nearby it, and it like explodes electricity around him, and it shocks him and staggers him again. But here's the thing. Every single time you use one of them, after he recovers, he shoots the thing with the freeze gun, which it disables it. So you can't use the same thing twice. So you have to keep, once you're done with using one part of the environment, you have to start scanning for another thing to use against him, which is already cool. Cool. Now here's the thing. So once you do that first one, once you do it the first time, you kind of figure out, especially the second time, you figure out, okay, there's these things in the environment that I can use my gadgets on to stagger him and create these openings to go deal damage to him. His health bar, he can take about 5 of these beatdowns or something like that. Because it's basically just a sequence. You run up to him, you hit the attack button a bunch of times, and then a big chunk gets taken out of the health bar. He can take maybe 5 of those, and there are exactly 5 interactable like environment objects. There's like 2 generators. There is the electrified water there, and then there are 2 explodable walls, 2 like damaged walls that you can blow up with your bat gel explosive. So you go through and you're like, okay, I figured this out. I'm gonna lead him over here, explode the wall, and now you've done it 4 times, and you're like, all right, now to the other end of the room. I'm gonna try make him go over here. And he walks up. He starts walking towards me, and I'm like, all right, this is a done deal. And he releases like a scanner bot thing that like locks onto your heat signature. And he says something like, did you really think I wouldn't expect that? And then he shoots the wall with his ice gun and freezes it over and you can't and disables your explosive. And I was like, whoa, wait, what? No, and then I tried to apply it again, and it just wouldn't. I think that you can apply it, but you can't detonate it. He just completely disables it. And it's been a long time since I had a game give me a feeling of like, wait, fuck. Hold up, what? Where I thought that I'd gotten the pattern down. I thought that I understood. I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to like kick this guy's ass. And then he does something that makes me go, hang on. Wait, shit. And now I'm actually like nervous and a little bit frantic of like, wait, what the fuck do I do now? What the fuck do I do now? And the game, I think they knew this because they give you a little tip of like, hey, press tab and we'll give you a pop-up of all the different weaknesses that Mr. Freeze's suit has. And I'm looking through them and I'm like, I can't do that because it's all environmental stuff. But there are a couple ways that don't require environmental interaction that you can actually use to stagger him. Most of them I think are probably a little difficult, but the one that I figured out was eventually what I did was I used the zip line. To just kick him, which was awesome. That was cool. I didn't even know there was a thing you could do, but you can take the zip line, which it's like shoots a line behind and in front of you and creates like a foundation for you to like zip across. And you can just do that in the room and attack while you're zipping across, and it'll like knock him over. I was like, that's awesome. It is a really cool fight. It is a great fight. It feels like it's a puzzle. There is, I guess, the one thing you could use against it is that it doesn't really use the game's combat system so much. But the fact that it leans so much more heavily on the gadgets and using the environment is such a cool feeling. Like, it's really what I want out of... It's one of those things you want out of a Batman game because, again, the detective angle. Batman is perceptive. He isn't just like a hand-to-hand fighter. He can use his environment. He can put together clues, figure out people's weaknesses, and then exploit them. And the fact that the game puts you in that situation and then puts you on the spot and now you have to improvise something new is really cool. That's a great feeling. I am actually recording this podcast onto my laptop because when I'm done with it and I want to and I'm like exporting the video, I want to play more Arkham City. I want to play more Arkham City on my PC, so I'm gonna make this on my laptop. I literally like pirated fucking Premiere and After Effects again onto my laptop so that I could do that. That is how into this game I am. I kind of doubt that my impression of it will change so much in the last, like, I don't know, maybe 30% of the game that I have left. But yeah, that's why I feel so comfortable talking about it now. I guess I can say the story is kind of dumb. The characters kind of acknowledge that it's dumb. Like, they acknowledge, man, this whole idea of locking down a part of the city and turning it into an open air prison this is like a terrible idea. What the fuck were they thinking? But that's kind of like the point. Like, characters acknowledge, like, this is weird. Is there something else going on? And yes, there is something else going on. I'm not sure exactly what yet, but there's clearly like some kind of big evil conspiracy plan for why things have gone so strange. Strange, because Hugo Strange is like a villain. Batman has so many stupid lines in this game. It's great. Like, they were not great at writing one-liners for Batman in this game. Fuck, I love that clip of when you start the Deadshot side mission, this like side story. And Oracle says, like, or no, Alfred goes like, the world's greatest assassin versus the world's greatest detective. Who will win? And Batman just goes, not him. Wow, what a zinger. That's like something Jotaro Kujo would say. There's like little moments where I'm like, why isn't he just doing this? Like, why is he acting specifically in this way in this situation? Like that whole confrontation with Ra's al Ghul, and like, why couldn't you just lie to him for like 5 seconds to take his blood from him? Does Batman have a no lying policy too, in addition to the no kill policy? Why couldn't you just be like, hey old man, I'm gonna like force you to the ground and like draw some of your blood from my to get the cure to my thing, to the poison that I've been infected with? No, Batman has to make this big grandstand about like, I will never take a life in order to save the world. I will always find another way. And it's like, dude, you could have just like fucking given him a little paper cut or something. Because that ends up leading to like a big ass confrontation boss fight where Ra's like gets young again and shit. And it's like, you could have just lied for like 5 seconds and taken care of this. I understand, does a character always act rationally? No, but I don't. It's like Batman. Like, I feel like he should be like, if any character is going to be hyper competent, it would probably be him. I don't see why he's making a decision like that. Yeah. Also, the insanity of the fact that like this entire game is supposed to take place on a single night makes no sense. Just makes no sense at all. All of the shit that goes down and all the places you go, and then Hugo Strange comes over the announcement. He's like, yes, it's been 1 hour. And you're like, no, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. Yeah, just like, I don't know, little silly suspension of disbelief type stuff. I think it's a little weird to make a game where a major element of the plot is that Batman's on a timer because he's been poisoned, but then also be an open world game where you can just kind of like chill out and do whatever the hell you want and go do 100 Riddler puzzles. It's like, why did Batman die? Oh, he was too busy doing Riddler puzzles on the rooftops. Yeah. No, I like a lot of the side missions. I actually like the Zaz thing with like finding telephones and then having to triangulate his locations with like a little mini game. I liked the identity thief subplot. The Azrael thing was cool. That was so neat, right? I love the fact that like you just finish a cutscene for something and then you're standing there and then in the background you're like, is there a guy hanging out on that roof? Who is that? And you just fly over and it's like, it's Azrael being like, Oh, Batman. I disappear into a cloud of smoke. All right. Okay, cool. Yeah, I do like the aesthetic quite a bit. I like the... Is it quite as nice looking as Asylum? Maybe not. But I do like the... When I say nice looking, I mean art style wise, not graphically, because graphically it was like a whole. No, that wasn't a generation later, but it was deep enough into the generation that it does look noticeably a little better in terms of stuff like lighting and character models. Oh my god, I never mentioned this. In Arkham Asylum, again, that game looks really good, but when you go up and talk to like an NPC or something, it switches to this like locked down portrait shot camera angle, and it makes the game look like shit. It looks so bad. It looks so stiff and weird. And that's something that like isn't nearly as big of a problem in this game. Like oh wow, just the way that a camera angle can completely shift the way that a game looks is crazy. But yeah, I'm having a great time with Arkham City. I'm a little bit obsessed with it. And then speaking of cities and superheroes, I was dumping more time into City of Heroes. Man, that game... Okay. The City of Heroes, does it have okay, it's a game from 2004, so you have to give it some slack. It's an MMO from 2004. You have to give it a little bit of benefit of the doubt that some things are going to be a little dated. And it has dated things, right? It has like skill trainers and stuff like that. But like, okay, does it have the most amazing visuals? No. Does it have the most incredible combat? No. Does it have the most amazing presentation and like storytelling ability? No. No, it doesn't. But goddamn, that game. I just love that world. I just love the world that it's in. It is like this... That game loves superheroes. It loves them to death. And superhero comics, it is just in every single corner. I feel like I'm always seeing some kind of new, cool environment. It's able to run through so many different themes, from like fantasy to... There's like obviously the city stuff. Like modern kind of slightly high-tech city. But there's like fantasy... There's like weird, almost post-apocalyptic, like wreckage, whole like zones that are like that. Like I love the way that Fault Line looks, just like these huge, these huge ravines and that have broken up all the parts of the city. I think I've found like my new favorite location, which is the Night Ward, which is the location. It's the place where the afterlife and the mortal world overlap. Excuse me. It's where they overlap. And it's like this... It's like the same city, but it's always night, and it has this kind of like gothic lighting and aesthetic. And there's this whole thing with like the stewards of the afterlife, who are like these... I don't know how to describe it. They're like old British night watchmen, but they have these weird heads. They're made of like candle wax. And there's like spirits walking around. It's just like this super cool environment compared to the rest of the game. Like very unique compared to the rest of the game. Just so cool. I have also, when I talk about old game jank, this game does have that. And I ran into one of those things, which I was not even aware of because I wasn't really far enough in the game, like high enough in level count to really catch it or to run into it. You can out-level quest lines in this game. Like, quests are entirely based around what are called contacts, which are like quest givers, but they are characters that you talk to and that you have on like your little remote, not like a phone. But it's just you can contact them remotely, and they give you the next objective, and they are who you like kind of interface with the story through. And quest lines as they call them, story arcs, are bound to like specific level ranges. It'll be like level 20 through 29. And if you're too low, you can't start the mission. You can't start it. And if you're above that range, you also cannot start it. So you can outlevel storylines. There is a solution though. I think once you reach like level 15 or 20 or something, you get access. There is a form of level sync. So if you play a game like FF14, FF14 has a mechanic where I don't think there's actually a cap on. They don't lock you out of doing quest lines, but dungeons. If you're going to do a dungeon that's set for a level that is much further below you, you do that. If you're over leveled for a dungeon from what it's defined as being for, once you queue into it, you will just be level synced, as they call it, and you will just automatically be dropped down to that level or whatever the max level of the range is, and you will have the abilities that you had at that level and the stats and everything, and you'll just be adjusted, and it works just fine. It's nice. City of Heroes has a version of that, but of course they lean into the theming 110%. So it's not just like an automatic thing that happens of like, oh, if you're on this quest line, you're gonna be dropped down. No, you have to go, and which I guess makes sense because if what are you gonna adjust? Are you gonna be adjusted for like every single, like until you like complete it, or until you give up or if you like delete the quest or something like. So what they do is you get the ability to open a portal to a dimension called Ouroboros, which is outside of time and space. And there's like a whole faction of basically like time cops who fix temporal anomalies throughout time. And you can use their like crystals, and you run up to the crystal and you click it, and it just gives you a bunch of drop down lists of every different level range and what the storylines are for them. And then you like select one, and then it just teleports you there. It just straight teleports you there. I think it's instanced actually. Like there aren't any other players. You're like time traveling back in time. You're level adjusted to whatever the max level is if you are past that point. And then you can just do it. And you know what I found out? This game actually has some good storylines. I was kind of just clicking through it because it's presented as just walls of text. But if you actually take the time, like the 5 seconds to actually read what's going on, there's some pretty interesting ones. It's actually a game that this would probably turn people off. But it is a game I would recommend playing with a guide on what story arcs to do. Because number one, they are designed to give you enough XP to get you to like, the next set of levels. Like it's how the leveling experience is designed, is to be doing, you're not supposed to be doing like the repeatable missions. The game has like a whole thing of repeatable missions and things like that, which is just kind of like fluff. It's just there to always make sure that you have a source of experience and money and stuff like that. No, like you're kind of supposed to be doing story arcs. That's kind of how the game is designed to be played. But because it's an old game, it's a little bit obtuse, and it doesn't really tell you that. You just kind of go all over the city and the different areas and the big zones, and sometimes you run into those big story arcs, and sometimes you just don't, and there's ones that I missed. And it turns out that there's literally a guide of like all the best story arcs and how/when to do them. And I've just been like time traveling back, and I've been doing the story arcs because I what started is I was doing the main arc for the Night Ward, and it is a sequel. The Night Ward content is like a sequel to the previous zone, which was the first ward, as it's called, which is like a daytime version of the night ward. And they're referencing things that happened that I'm like, wait, what? I literally feel like I jumped into a comic run and I didn't realize that there's like context that I needed to actually read some other stuff beforehand. Because I thought it was really fun. I really liked the Night Ward story so far. There's this whole thing where there's like this coven of witches called the Talons of Vengeance, and they have they've been doing some shit that has been causing a bunch of souls, like they've been causing a bunch of souls to head to the afterlife and like making sacrifices or something. And the problem with that is that the way that the afterlife in City of Heroes works is there are these like night watchman guys that I mentioned. They're called like whatever, the stewards or whatever. They're essentially like they shuffle people between worlds, between the life. They shuffle souls into the afterlife via like a ghost train. And it's like a business for them. And they essentially have this higher power that they answer to. And they are rewarded with wax. They're rewarded with candle wax, which keeps them like replenished because they're made out of wax and lit. And because of the increased influx, of souls going into the Night Ward, the value of a human soul has been driven down by market economics. And so they're kind of like, they're freaking out and it's fucking up their business. And so they have to like shuttle as many as they can, because now that the value of there's so many souls, not only have the value of the souls gone down, that means that they're getting less wax per spirit. So they have to like, they're freaked out and they have to send as many through as possible. And I'm like, that's really funny. And you run into this problem as part of this whole thing where there's like this mansion of like kind of gothic themed characters called the Midnighters, or the Midnight Society or something like that. And there's some thing with like some evil wizard guy, and you have to go get his soul back. And because he has this spell, there's a bunch of like living spells loose in the mansion that you have to put down, like orbs and shit like that you have to go fight. And then they're like, yeah, they were all like laid there by this evil wizard dude because he turned evil on us. And then you have to go grab his soul before it gets taken off on the ghost train, and then bring him all the way back to the mansion, and then go grab his armor so that he can inhabit it because his body's rotted away. And then you have to go fight him because he's evil for 5 seconds when he gets revived. And then you're like, oh, his resurrection has like awakened the overspell of the mansion, which is called Ward. And it's this giant just ball of light that talks like a computer. And it becomes like your new contact for a quest line. And it's like, I need you to go. A bunch of my spells, my spell children are loose. Go find them. So you go to this like burnt out office building. And there's all these like loose spells, like fireballs and storms of ice and stuff like that, and balls of light. And you fight through them until you find like their leader, named Clarity, who is also just like a ball of like rainbow light. And the spells have started she is the leader of this emancipation commune because the spells are tired of being slaves to wizards. And your character hears that and you're like, yeah, no, that makes sense. No, I actually totally get where you're coming from. That's cool if you want to live like that. How do you want me to tell your dad that you're not coming home? It's like that, like that's the direction that it goes. Like such a funny, weird plot line. But they start mentioning characters that I'm like, I don't know who that is. So I went back in time travel to do the first Ward storylines, and they're fun. There's like this whole, it's like this weird war zone between these kind of like refugee rebels and some kind of, what is it? It's like a it was hit by some kind of disaster, some kind of magical disaster. So sometimes there's just like giant orbs in the sky of like blob amoeba things that's like an overworld boss that you can go fight with other people. And then you go to this like compound where all these rebels are holed up, because there's like this militant group that's also there, and it's like there's like this whole dynamic to this zone. And you do a plot line where the leader is this guy called the Monarch, the leader of these survivors. And the Monarch his mind has broken. He's having these visions, and he thinks that he has a daughter. And he's making he's painting these watercolor paintings of this daughter who doesn't exist. And this has caused a problem because he believes that she has been kidnapped by these people from one of the factions called the Carnival of Light, who are like magic jesters. And he has imprisoned a few of them, and it's creating political tensions between them, and because they have like a loose allyship with each other in the first ward. So someone in the organization is like, go talk to Monarch and like figure out what the fuck is going on with him. So you go to him, and he's like this weird shambling mess, and there's descriptions in like the walls of text of like him like stuttering and looking around, and he just gives off this super weird vibe. And you're like, I think I can help get your daughter back. Just give me like one of these paintings, and I'll go ask one of the prisoners from the Carnival of Light about it. So you take it to them, and one of them happens to be a psychic, and he like reads the painting, and he goes, actually, this is not a fake person. This isn't like a hallucination. And you're like, what? And he goes, no, the person in this painting exists. I don't know if he's her father, probably not, but like it's a real person. So you go do, she's like a captive. She's being held captive by these mutants, and you go save her from the mutants. And it turns out that like everybody has a big confrontation, and it turns out that not only this girl, Anna, she's not his daughter. I thought it was going to be like, it seemed to me like, oh, this is her. She's like a psychic, and she's putting visions in his head so that someone can come rescue her. Like that was her plan all along. And then no, what is the real thing that happens? It turns out that Monarch, so this girl Anna is the daughter of a king from another dimension, and Monarch has been possessed by the king's spirit. And that's why he is like losing his mind, because the king is trying to take him over and giving him these visions and these emotions of this daughter that he never actually had, who is the king's daughter. And then you have to like fight him, and he like turns into like a crazy fucking energy form. And I was like, that was crazy. What a weird, interesting plot line. And there's just like stuff like that fairly frequently. Once you get past like the opening couple story arcs, which are mostly just kind of like introductions to the world and the characters and a lot of the concepts and stuff where you're kind of getting your bearings. There are so many fun, goofy, comic booky plot lines in that game that are really fun and genuinely pretty good. They're limited, of course, by the fact that the technology at the time was a little bit primitive for telling a story like that. So like there's no voice acting. There's no voice acting because these games came on discs, and that takes up a lot of space. If you're going to have a lot of voice acting, there's next to none in the game. And again, it is just walls of text, but the writing of them, at least for like the bigger story arcs, it actually feels like it has some effort put into like, okay, they're actually trying to set a scene and tell you about what's actually happening with this character. Sometimes they even have different camera angles. Whoa. This is also the point in the game where I'm around like level 30, where you start hitting, like the like level 20 through 29 story arcs. That's where you start getting to make like actual decisions. Like you could actually say like, I think I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. Like I went through one where there's this group of benevolent mutants that you go save some of the survivors, some of the like rebels from, because they were being held captive due to a miscommunication. And some of them are like chill with the mutants and they think they're actually like cool, and they realize there's been a misunderstanding. And the other ones are like out for blood. There's like 3 of them out of the 7 that are like, fuck, they just want to kill. And you can choose whether or not to release them. You can choose whether, like, if you're going to let them just let loose. And I don't know what kind of repercussions that has on the storyline, but I chose not to. But, like, they give you things like that for you to actually kind of, role play as a character in a role-playing game. Yeah, oh my god. I don't know, man. That game I just love being in that world. I love playing my character. I love just going into the character creator and coming up with like a neat set of powers and a cool appearance and stuff like that. It is so much fun. It's a game that is engaging in ways that, I don't know, that no other MMO has really engaged me with or like. When people say that they have a ton of nostalgia for City of Heroes, or that they love that game, or they, some of it is definitely nostalgia talking. But there is really something there. Like, it is a really interesting, cool, special game. Man, I've been going for 2 hours. I didn't talk about that much. I'll give a couple quick shout outs. Very cool fighting game that I played called Robo Oh. Robo-OH. Robo Oh. It's on Steam. And it is a really cool NES-styled fighting game. They are really faithful. Like, it looks like an NES game in terms of color palette, like literally how many colors there are on screen and in sprites and stuff. The animations, but it doesn't feel limited. It doesn't feel limited obviously, but it's clearly scaled down. Like, it only uses essentially 2 attack buttons. So like, I'd say like in many ways a simple game with kind of simple mechanics, but really solid. Some cool characters. It is a mecha fighting game. It is inspired by like, you get like all the Power Rangers, the Zords, giant robot movies and stuff like that. Transformers. Taking inspiration from all those things. And it still feels, actually, it doesn't feel clunky at all. If it's a nice feeling game, it's pretty fun. It has some cool character concepts. There's like a cowboy robot, and he has a command grab, and then he also has a move called Howdy, and it just makes him tip his hat. It doesn't do anything, but if you spend a bar to do the EX version, it powers up his next command grab, and I think the power up stacks almost infinitely, so you can, or it stacks up to like a limit of like maybe 10 or something, and you can like do. I just went into training mode with like infinite meter and just spammed it, and then did one command grab, and it like almost killed. It did like 90%. It's like, oh, that's fun. Really cool ass game. I like that one. Beneath a Steel Sky is a game that's free on GOG. It's an old point and click adventure game by Revolution Software. It was Revolution who also did the Broken Sword games, and Lure of the Temptress, and a couple other, classic old point and click adventures. Beneath a Steel Sky is a pretty fun, very grungy, what do they call it? Diesel punk kind of game. And it's got like a fun little British sense of humor. It has really beautiful art. The whole premise is that it's like this future setting where there's this kind of weird sort of dystopian city. Everything else is like a vast desert, and the main character gets brought in. He gets kidnapped from outside and brought into the city because he lives in the wilderness, and now he's trying to find a way out. And also maybe he has like family ties or something there, or there's like a person who's interested in him that wanted him to be kidnapped. So you're like going through, and uncovering clues to this plot, and also solving silly moon logic point and click puzzles. Most of the game takes place in a surprisingly small number of locations. There's like there's like 5 locations total in terms of like big things that aren't just there's like 3 levels of this building that you go through with rooms inside, and then like an extra 4th one that the last part of the game takes place in. You can beat it pretty quickly, I'd say, in maybe like 7 hours. It's not a very long game, and the first half of the game I felt like a little easier. It's a little better, depending on how you think of it. The main problem that I was running into, where I had to start consulting guides, is that once you get deeper into the game and unlock further and further areas, the number of the things that the game expects you to know or to remember skyrockets. It just goes up exponentially, where it's like, no, okay, you have to take this item that you get way over here and then go all the way back over here into this room that I completely forgot about, and that's the only way to advance. There's a point near the end where you have like, there's some kind of neat like points where you go into cyberspace. The music is great. But like, you have like 3 separate inventories in cyberspace, and there's a moment where you have to do a sequence of tasks that you just sort of have to figure out. And the only way to do it is by swapping between all 3 of those cyberspace inventories by jacking in, jacking out, and then doing it like 2 more times with your other inventories to like use the items that are specific to those ones. And it's like, yeah. Pretty good, all things considered, but yes, it does certainly suffer from a little bit of adventure game. How the fuck am I supposed to figure that out? Kind of syndrome. Yeah. Oh, and it's free, by the way, on good old games. So check it out. I'm gonna draw this to a close. I'm gonna make some damn dinner. If you have been listening this far, thank you for listening to me ramble. Go check out the System Shock video on my channel. It's doing like shockingly well. It's like the best performing video I've made in a while. And if you have a question, please leave it down below in the comments down below, but phrase it in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Check out my Patreon. I got nothing else to talk about. Goodbye.